All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of the channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the roll, don't roll grift for week 10 of fantasy football. And I want to start off a little bit talking about the Thursday night game. Again, like this is the high implied point totals between the Bengals and the Ravens. And again, don't trust Thursday night football. This was, I think I saw that 21-7 with like 4 minutes left to go in the third quarter. And then all the scoring happens in the fourth. Again, not being able to trust what goes on. So Jamar Chase, one of the things that I did kind of want to talk about now when it comes to a guy like him, why guys like him are valuable. I think he almost put up like 50 points in this game from a fantasy perspective. And again, I don't particularly like guys that are going to get their opportunities cannibalized by somebody else, like when T Higgins is healthy or something like that. But like why a guy like Jamar Chase is so valuable, and why building a lineup around a guy that can be as volatile as he can tend to be on certain weeks, like it kind of changes how I would strategize. I know I probably need like a rock in my lineup to go along with him. But anyway, other things is Chase Brown and vacated targets, and running back with the receiving work. So he comes in, he does 9 for 52 to go along with that on 11 targets. Again, vacated chasing those vacated targets. That's why running backs that have receiving work end up being so valuable to go along with it. And let's see. Ravens and guessing right on who's on, who's going to score in a good offense. So this one, like I had to look up who Tylan Wallace was. He had 3 targets. He has had no more than 2 targets in any given game. Um, and he's been there for 4 years. Mark Andrews, he does score, and probably should have thought about this ahead of time. With Isaiah likely missing the game with a hamstring, probably would consolidate some of those opportunities when it comes to the tight end room. I think I saw that he had the highest route participation that he's had all year. And then the ongoing saga of Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers in this game. It was a Rashad Bateman week. 8 for 6 for 54 and touchdown. Generally, just chasing the opportunity on an offense that looks like they're going to score a lot of points. And again, I have this written down. Good offenses are what we kind of want to be looking at from a fantasy perspective, and then guessing right on those good offenses, meaning like we could be wrong on certain weeks where certain opportunities don't go to the right guys on our offense, as opposed to those opportunity funnels, where those opportunity funnels, like we know where the opportunities are going to go to, but, and here's the but, good offenses, they can spread it around because they don't care about your fantasy lineup. Opportunity funnels can be taken away by defenses that are just like, that's not the guy that we're going to let you beat us. So again, fantasy guessing right, it's still a little bit of gambling, because that's what it is. So I also had a little bit of a question about the point totals that I use, and I just generally pull it up, just Google, like, NFL lines. I don't know that much about gambling. I did kind of want to bring this up because it was asked why I use the open as opposed to everybody else, and I'm just trying to get a feel for what the games are, what Vegas thinks the games are, because this is what Vegas does for a living. And then I looked over the ESPN; they have the lines over here, so it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just generally trying to see, like, do they expect this to be a lower scoring game, like the Bears and the Panthers, or the Bears and the Pats at 38.5, or do I think it's gonna be a higher scoring game, and you're looking at like 50 points for the Dolphins and the Rams, or 50 points for San Francisco and the Buccaneers? Like that's what I'm looking at. So the same thing with this Ravens and Bengals game, where you're looking at, and this is just this site, because I don't really care about like what the exact line is. Bengals by 3.5 in this one, or Ravens by 3.5, and you're looking at like total implied points for the game is actually a little bit lower than what it was, like 47.5. That's a little surprising. I would expect it to be like closer to 50. But that's what it was. So like, closer to 50 is usually good, and then closer to like into 30s is usually bad. I'm just generally saying, like, do they know something I don't? Because if I go looking around, and I need to look at that. Now, I also have in my notes to talk about this real quick is I have talked to one of my co-managers in the past about this, because last year the team that we lost in the championship game last year had a really good roster, and my co-manager by the end of the year was like, I know what you mean now by having a better roster makes it harder to pick who you want to roll on a week-to-week basis, because we had like Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Brees Hall, and somebody else is our running back, and he was like, which one of our running backs do we play? And I'm like, your guess is going to be as good as mine. So again, some of the roll don't roll stuff, the stress of it, like when you have to choose between a couple of guys, like that's a good thing to have. It means you have a good roster, as opposed to just having guys, and you know who your guys are, and it just relieves the stress, and you're just not going to have to overthink like the roll don't roll part of it. Now, some of the most fun I've had in fantasy comes down to having those rosters that like are lacking, and trying to put together like the team that I can just get into the playoffs. Because if I get into the playoffs, then I'm gonna have a puncher's chance against everybody. Those are the fun ones where it's like, who's going to be wide receiver 2, who's going to be my running back 2, who's going to be my flex on a week-to-week basis, and trying to like will together the right lineup, knowing that I don't really have that much control over that. So let me see. I bring this all up because like the sit starts are usually a good problem. I already said that. And then remember, like, punting isn't a bad idea from a fantasy perspective, but punting won't win against the guy that, like, he guesses right on all of his coin flips that he rolls out there. So kind of same thing with Jamar Chase. Like, he's going to give you that massive upside game. He's also going to probably give you those like sub 40-degree days to go along with it. And if you're only building these lineups going like, well, I just want that 40-degree day, that game might come back to bite you in your week 14 when you need to get into the playoffs, or like your chip or your semifinals when you're just like, I'm not shooting for enough upside. And that's kind of the theory behind the channel, is going after some of these like these dart throws that are, like your Grant Calcaterras or something like that, that are primarily not going to be as intuitive, because if I hit that spike week, I'm going to win that week for myself, as opposed to just like trying to throw that guy out there that like, he's a 40-degree day, but he's not going to have enough upside to go chase like Jamar Chase. And a guy in my main money league, he had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and I think that's like 90 points against the guy that he's going out there. And the guy's projection in that league that he's going up against is like 90 something, and now he's looking at like two guys putting up basically the projection for his entire roster for the week. Like, he better just start rolling out all the upside guys if he wants a chance to beat like that Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow stack that he's going up against. So anyway, let's move on now. Weather wise, I want to bring this one. There isn't really any weather games right now. Like, it's more going to be the wind in the Patriots and the Bears. Maybe that's going to be a consideration. 50% chance for the Bills and the Colts in this one, and that's 12-mile-an-hour winds. Chance of rain, 50% snaps for the Falcons, and that's a dome game, so I don't really care about that. Most of the rest of them, like maybe a little bit of wind in the Jaguars and Vikings, but again, 35% chance of rain. There's not a lot that's going to really make me go like, I have to really be concerned with some of those games. I think there was one of the snow games a few years ago that definitely was like, I'm just going to go like with the running backs and bench the guys. So trying to guess on those cuter things, and that would probably be in the range of like my, if I'm not really sure about my twos or my flexes or something like that, if you're in those leagues where you run like 3 wide receivers, something along those lines. All right, Carolina and New York to start things off with. The Giants, it's in Munich, so remember, like, those are the variables that I generally like to stay away from if I can. Right now you are looking at Darius Slayton. He's going to be out with his concussion. That means like vacated targets are going to generally go to running backs. I don't necessarily know if I would upgrade Tyrone Tracy other than slightly, because they just haven't been using him in the passing game. I wouldn't know if that would necessarily go there. The two guys that I would probably be looking at, like, it would put like Jalen Hyatt in dart throw range in deeper leagues, and then Theo Johnson definitely becomes like streamable. Like, this would be one of those guys, like, if you want to get cute and you want to chase that upside of that massive spike week, now we can start talking about like Theo Johnson being the number 3, which means like he can get rolled in all leagues. 6 for 351, and that was like 81 air yards on top of that with that touchdown. Like, now we can start talking about like, is this a predictive spike week when it comes to Theo Johnson? And again, it would depend on who you're going after. So again, certain guys, if you missed on some of these tight ends that are out there because you didn't get like your Kittle, and I was trying to think about like outside of like being wrong on Mark Andrews, who else would you been right on? If you missed on your Cade Otton opportunity for the period of time that Mike Evans is out, like, this would be the type of time like how cute you would have to be getting to be rolling your Theo Johnsons out there versus like the guy that you're playing. Like, do you think you need that spike week, or do you think that 40-degree day is out there? Now for the Panthers right now, if I can find them. Adam Thielen, he is out right now. Will not play week 10. Jonathan Brooks, he's on the active roster. He won't play this week. The rumors are that he will not be playing until after the bye week. They basically activated him so he wouldn't be on IR for the rest of the year because they opened the window. And again, week 12 bye, so that's what they're generally looking at. He's not going to play this week. and he's going to come back like week 12 at this point, if you're wondering. And then they gave a big contract extension to Chuba Hubbard, but we'll talk about that in after waivers. Tommy Tremble is questionable with a back, so you could be looking at upgrading like Jentavion Sanders again if you want to be rolling. I don't think he's got quite the upside as a Theo Johnson does. And then the other thing is like this would mean like chasing your Leggett. That would probably be the only guy I really want to. After what they did with Coker, it's definitely the low snap share that I would not be generally chasing this week. 45% snaps. I probably wouldn't be chasing that at all in this one. And again, remember it's the Munich game, so that means that's this variable that I generally don't want to be chasing if I don't have to. And then obviously like Chuba's probably still borderline RB1, even regardless. Pats and Bears, and again, this is one of the ones we're talking about, like 38.5 implied points. Bears by 6, and if you're wondering, like 40.5 when it comes to the Giants and the Panthers. 6.5 point favorite for the Giants. When it comes to the Bears and New England, lower implied points mean like I generally want to stay away from this game. And again, the part of this is going to be Chicago is supposed to blow out the Patriots, that 6-point lead, or 6-point favorite for the Bears in this one, and that's because like the Bears have a good defense going against the rookie. So I want to limit my exposure to probably like everything that I can in this game. That's the long and short of it, and there aren't any injury considerations when it comes down to that. Buffalo and the Colts, 46.5 implied points on ESPN. 4-point favorite for the Bills. A little bit of news in this one. You're looking at, first of all, like Amari Cooper. He is questionable with a wrist coming off of last week. I do have written down he did get limiteds all in this week. And then Keon Coleman's going to be out with a wrist. Michael Pittman for the Colts, he's going to be out. And that would probably upgrade everybody. Again, I don't know how much I really want to be chasing the Colts after what they did last week. What did look like a good matchup. So like the only guy I probably really would be chasing would be Josh Downs if he's on my roster. You could talk about like Alec Pierce and vacated targets and Adonai Mitchell having a spike week. Like that would be the one guy if I was going to get a little bit cute on, it would be him. When it comes to the Bills, again, vacated targets go to running backs first. So like James Cook, obviously Dalton Kincaid, that we're kind of already tracking on having a spike week eventually. And then it gets even more appealing. Dalton Kincaid moving into unicorn land if Amari Cooper also misses in the game. Broncos and Chiefs are next. 41.5 points of the Chiefs by 7.5, so they're expecting another blowout. And again, this is another one where, based off what we saw with the Broncos going up against what would generally look like a favorable matchup from a fantasy perspective for the Broncos and not getting it done. So I would probably want to limit my exposure even to like a Cortland Sutton in this game. Again, the Chiefs are like one of the better defenses in all of football right now. And then didn't have any injury news for anybody this week when it comes down to this game as I look through everybody. So like the main one, like right now we are tracking on Juju being out still, I think with a hamstring, if I can find it through my mic. That would be the one thing. And I don't think that matters because we can generally kind of talk about like Justin Watson's probably going to be the trustworthy guy. Worthy's going to take like those deep shots, and then expect the uptick when it comes to DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins, I very much would be rolling out as like a wide receiver 2 this week. Running back wise, like the only news on this one would be like if we think we're going to get like Clyde being active, and if that's going to eat into anybody else's role not named Kareem Hunt in the offense. Or excuse me, the only guy that I would really care about is Clyde eating into would be Kareem Hunt. I don't think it really matters if he eats into anybody else because those other guys are already eating into Kareem Hunt. Up next, Falcons and the Saints in this one. So you're looking at 46.5 implied points for this game. 3.5 point favorite for the Falcons. That's a little interesting considering all the problems that the Saints have. That might be because it's going to be in New Orleans when it comes down that. So in this one, you are looking at Chris Olave being out with a concussion. Still could get IR'd. I did see that. Cedric Wilson's going to be out with a shoulder in this one. Let's see. And then Jamal Williams did pop up again. He's unlikely with a groin, the same groin he's been dealing with. I'm going to talk about Kendre Miller on after waivers. If you're wondering about that, there's some interesting stuff when it comes to the coaches and his IR stint going on. And then when it comes to the Falcons, Drake London is questionable with a hip. I did see that like he did not look good on Thursday's practice, but now they're saying he felt good on Friday's practice. So like buyer beware. I probably downgrade him in my lineup and then build around him as necessary if he is active based off of like what they're talking about. Again, this is one of the dreaded active but decoy type things. And then the main thing, because of Olave being out and Cedric Wilson being out, like I would even push as far as say like a double tight end comps when it comes to like Taysom Hill. The dreaded double tight end comp where you're rolling Taysom Hill is in your flex spots this week. If you can roll him as a tight end because of all the vacated opportunities that are likely going to be out there for him. All right, moving on to the Niners and the Bucks. I want to make sure, and then obviously like Darnell Mooney would get upgraded, Kyle Pitts would get upgraded if London is out in the game, and Bijan probably would absorb a certain amount of targets if London is also out. All right, Niners and Bucks are going to be up next in this one. And they're going to be 50 implied points in this game, so they're expecting a lot of scoring, which isn't surprising. And 6.5 point favorite when it comes to the 49ers. I would say that is slightly surprising, considering that the Buccaneers, like they did just go toe to toe last week with the Chiefs, and then the 49ers have been inconsistent. So I wouldn't necessarily trust that line as much. If you're care, I do generally think it would project towards a higher scoring game overall. And this one, I have my stats pulled up if I ever want to talk about them. But in this one, a lot of 49ers news. So we're still tracking that CMC is going to be making his debut in this game right now. So like everything looks like it's going to be wheels up when it comes to that one. Now, the other thing is Jordan Mason does not have an injury designation when it comes to his shoulder. So, paying attention to what's going to go on with this one, like you could theoretically get one more week of Jordan Mason if you get a surprise like CMC scratch or something like that. You also could probably get like a desperation roll with Jordan Mason when it comes to if you want to be guessing that there is a split backfield when it comes to these guys for one more week. In general, I probably would not be wanting to do that unless I have to. Debo was full on Friday, but he's still questionable with that rib and oblique. Chris Conley right here. So this is a little interesting. So where's he at? He's going to be out with that hamstring. And the reason why I bring him up is last couple of weeks, he did like 70 and 76% snaps. So him continuing to be out means if there was a guy that I was kind of maybe wondering if he was going to stay part of the rotation, it would be him. So right now, like Jawan Jennings would be like a solid wide receiver 3 going into this week, and probably wouldn't be looking at rolling Ricky Pearsall, but I would be looking at stashing him to see if the 49ers just decide that that's the guy that they want to be rolling out there in like that 70-80% snaps roll when it comes down to him. Again, like getting pieces of good offenses, even if you can't always predict where the opportunities are going to go, knowing how you're going to build your your lineup around that guy. Generally I would want to be rolling out all the pieces of the Ravens I can, unless I can get cute around them. Because I want pieces of like 4 touchdowns by Lamar Jackson. Obviously, I'm going to be rolling out Derrick Henry, and it just becomes an issue of like where those touchdown passes are going to be able to go. You could say the same thing about certain teams like the 49ers. You just want to be rolling out like the wide receiver 2 for them is probably going to have a certain amount of week-to-week value when it comes down to it. All right, Buccaneers. Jalen McMillan right now, he's tracking on being questionable at hamstring. He did get a limited in on Friday, if you're wondering. Bucky Irving has no injury designation with a toe. Like Jalen McMillan would probably be a wide receiver 3, that type range if he did roll. I don't know how much I would necessarily want to be chasing Ryan Miller's 62% snaps, and then you're also going to be looking at Raheem Jarrett and his 84% snaps. Those would be like low end dart throws if you're in like really deep leagues, if you want to be chasing all that stuff in a matchup with a lot of predicted points that's going to be going on in that. And I just generally would say like Cade Otton, like he's a unicorn. If McMillan rolls, like I would probably be feeling pretty good about rolling him out there. And then Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, like probably, there's going to be still a lot of vacated targets, even though it didn't happen that way when it comes to like Rachaad White last week in the offense. Steelers and Redskins they're going to be up next in this one. And you're looking at 45.5 implied points, 2.5 point favorite for when it comes to the Washington Redskins, which again, like I'm going to say is primarily going to be based upon it being a home game for them. I could definitely see that the Steelers are going to be, getting the better of this one. Just from a defensive perspective. And this would be one of those ones, like from a matchup perspective, I would think about like benching Jane Daniels, except for the fact like he's a nimbly bimbly quarterback, which means that he can primarily just get you home with his legs, like Drake May did, like 8 for 95, I think, last week. When it comes down to these, even in bad matchups, those like rushing quarterbacks can still get home. Right now, B-Rob, he's going to be out with his hamstring going into this game. So now we can start talking about like theoretically getting an Austin Eckler bell cow game. I don't think you're going to get like full bell cow, but you're probably going to get close enough. Especially because trying to guess on what went on last week when it did look like it was going to be a blowout, like he might go close to 70-80% snaps and a lot of the good stuff if it is more of a knife fight, which I would imagine it's going to project to being. And that's about all the injury news I have in this one. No news whatsoever when it comes to Mike Williams. I don't think it would change, especially this week. You're rolling out your George Pickens. If you want to be rolling him out there, he's probably going to be in that like boom bust wide receiver 2 range. When it comes down to it, like know what you have, know what you're building your lineup around. And then after this week, we can start guessing on like what's going to happen with Mike Williams. But I did look up to see if like there's any news about whether or not he's going to play or not in this one. And then you would be looking at like Jalen Warren being like a low end running back 2 if you have to, and then Najee right now is pretty solid running back 2 overall on the season. And Scary Terry would be the only other guy I would probably be rolling out. Zach Ertz would probably be downgraded to like low end streamability in deeper leagues. Vikings and Jags are going to be next on this one. And you're looking at 43.5 implied points, Minnesota by 7. And, I definitely agree with this in line all the way around. So right now, some interesting stuff. I did go look this up when it comes to like Trevor Lawrence in this one. It does look like he's been getting limited practices in. And then it does look like, again, coach speak, he's trending in the wrong direction. But I went and looked up. He is looking like he's getting limited practices in. So you're probably going to have to be waiting for it. I don't necessarily think this like downgrades the toys. Like the bigger issue with like Mac Jones. Mac Jones is an interesting guy when it comes to can sort of be a gunslinger, and then that Patriots offense, like that's all we've seen him. Like he is like good enough at football, I think, to keep your toys on track if you're going to be rolling out the Jaguars. If he's put in the right situation, like think of like a Jameis Winston, where it may not matter. Like you just might get a lot of attempts. This may be more of a coaching issue. So I don't know if this is necessarily even a downgrade from a fantasy perspective. It might actually be an upgrade if they just let him go out there and do Mac Jones things and throw the football to like your guys and their guys and whatever when it comes down to that stuff. Let's see. D'Ernest Johnston, he pops up with a hamstring, limited on Thursday and Friday. So like probably not as big of a deal because Travis Etienne is off the injury report with his hamstring, and you're also looking at like Tank Bigsby, I think, set to roll also with that ankle. So the big thing with D'Ernest Johnson would be how much he eats into everybody else. If you were to get like some type of like dirty RB2, if the other guys were out or something like that, I don't think any of that's going to happen. Now you're just going to be generally guessing on rolling out Etienne, and remember like the Vikings, and this is why I have this one pulled up when it comes to best when it comes to stopping the run. They're number 2 when it comes to stopping the run. So like you're not generally going to be looking at trying to get like Etienne or Tank Bigsby from the rushing work. You're going to be looking at trying to get them from vacated opportunities when it comes to the passing game. If you want to be doing something like that, and it is projecting to be a Vikings blowout from Vegas perspective, I would kind of lean that direction, which means you're going to get more passing work in the first place in that matchup. Right now, you're going to be looking at Brian Thomas. Let's see if we pull him up. He was limited with a chest. He's questionable. Gabe Davis is going to be questionable with the shoulder. I couldn't find if Gabe Davis has been getting like limited in or not. I'm sure it's probably someplace on Twitter, but I don't care that much one way or another. I would generally think that the bigger thing that you're going to get out of this is the upgrade of Parker Washington. He would either operate, he's going to operate like pretty close to the number 3 regardless. It just becomes an issue of If Gabe Davis is out, he may be the beneficiary of those vacated targets going to him. Versus if Gabe Davis is in the game, Gabe Davis could be the guy who ends up having the spike week over Parker Washington. Brian Thomas, again, like the bigger news would be that Christian Kirk's going to be on IR, and if Brian Thomas is going to be rolling out there, like that becomes like a no brainer. This would also upgrade Evan Ingram, and it just becomes an issue of like how much more you're going to get an upgrade to Evan Ingram with Gabe Davis being out or not. But again, there's already vacated opportunities when it comes to Christian Kirk and an offense that we would project to be throwing a lot this week in the first place. And then no news when it comes to the Vikings. Let's see. TJ Hawkinson would probably be like right on the fringe of streamability or rolling him out as a tight end when this is probably like the last week where you're gonna have to make that decision. So like unless you have like you're in a position where it's like Taysom Hill or TJ Hawkinson or something along those lines, like you're probably not going to be worried about like is it this week to be rolling out your TJ Hawkinson, like a Dalton Kincaid or TJ Hawkinson. That would be the coin flip you'd be looking at. Most of your other tight ends, like you're in the role range where like you are going to at least get like a touchdown dependent tight end at the very least when it comes to TJ Hawkinson for this week, with the expectation that the snaps are going to go up at least like 15 to 20% at a minimum to go along with it. And he already had 4 targets last week. Titans and Chargers are going to be up next, and you're looking at 38.5 implied points, Chargers by 7.5. So again, they're expecting that the Chargers are going to beat down the Titans. So I want to kind of stay away from as much of this game as I can. Unfortunately, that's just the way it looks, outside of like maybe like the top end guys that I have to be rolling. In this one, you are looking at Will Levis is going to start. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears have no injury designation going into this game. So outside of like really wanting to roll the Chargers defense against Will Levis, Ladd McConkey's probably going to stay like fringe wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2, something along those lines. And remember that the Titans do technically have a good defense. If we're worried about that, rushing yards, they should be towards the top right there. And again, like this is kind of a stats lie when it comes to like if they turn the football over a lot, they're going to have teams that are going to be like milking the clock. That's why those go up. Like the Titans do have like one of the better overall defenses in football right there when it comes to total points a game. Remember, stats do lie a little bit. So I don't know if I would necessarily want to be rolling out Dobbins, but you're probably going to get a lot of red zone opportunities in the game overall. So like I wouldn't overthink that too much, unless you're in one of those situations where you have like multiple RB2s that you have to be worrying about when it comes down to that. Looking at the rest of my notes, I don't have anything else to really talk about when it comes to that. Let's see. Eagles and Cowboys are going to be next on the list. 43.5 points this week. Philadelphia by 7. Not surprising. Still, maybe Dak's going to go on IR. He's going to be out. Rico Dowdle probably is going to be in that like somewhere in this wide range of RB2s. I did look this up. Like the news is that Zeke is supposed to be active this week, whatever that means. And then Dalvin Cook did revert back to the practice squad again. So like having to guess on that, I'm not as concerned with Dalvin Cook, the 9% snaps that he did. You just may not get 71% snaps. Rico Dowdle, they might go back to something like 50-50 split between the two of those guys. That's why I would say like I generally think that Rico Dowdle is still an RB2. It just becomes like, is he flirting with RB1 or is he flirting with RB3? And that's going to be like your call on that one. If you want to be gambling on that guy when it comes to being the running back attached to an offense with the backup quarterback about to make the start. In this one, in an offense that has been pretty inconsistent for the whole year. AJ Brown has no injury designation when it comes to the Eagles. Let's see. Actually, I'll take a step back. If you're wondering about your CeeDee Lamb shares, he has no injury designation. I want to bring this one up to start off with. No injury designation when it comes to his shoulder. If you're worried about that, and I generally talk about this in after waivers, I think Cooper Rush is good enough that you're not going to get a substantial downgrade, especially because of how inconsistent the offense has been all year. Probably not like the most ideal situation, but I wouldn't be overthinking it when it comes to CeeDee Lamb. And then AJ Brown, he doesn't have an injury designation with that knee. And then Devontae Smith, he did pop up on the injury report with a hamstring, and then he's off the injury report also. Dallas Goedert, he is also like doesn't have an injury designation with that hamstring, so like there goes my dreams of being right on Grant Calcaterra. Dallas Goedert, he is the number 3 in that offense. Generally I would say like an okay offense when it comes to the Eagles, so he's just going to be in that like coin flip range when it comes to streamability versus tight end 1. Let's see, Jets and Cardinals, they're going to be next in this one. 46.5 points total, 1.5 point favorites when it comes to the Jets in this one. Let's see, Tyler Conklin, he does pop up if you're wondering. I don't think this necessarily changes anything with an ankle, surprise ankle. When it comes out, I don't think it changes anything when it comes to anybody when it comes down to that. James Conner was the other one that popped up, and this is a little interesting. So kind of tracking on that hip, ankle, whatever like caused him to miss time against Week 9 in Chicago. What he popped up in the injury report this week was a finger, and then he's off the injury report when it comes down to that. So I wouldn't be overthinking that too much. It's just interesting that like we're tracking one thing and they're saying that he's got another one going on with this one. And then I would feel pretty good about rolling, both Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, even though, they may be a little volatile. They might eat into each other. But again, when we're talking about the ability to have a certain week, obviously they're not Chase Brown, but or Jamar Chase, you would be, trying to get cute if you're going to be guessing on one of those guys being anything more than like a solid wide receiver 2 with potentially like wide receiver 1 ranges of outcomes when it comes to both those guys. And then Lions and Texans in this one. 48.5 points. Lions by 4. None of that's really surprising in this one. Well, actually, the Lions being 4 points favorites at Houston is a little surprising. This is probably an indication that Houston has been a little disappointing. And again, they're a little banged up when it comes to the wide receiver core. So that, again, now I think about it, it's not too surprising. The higher implied points on top of why I guess that I could see that the Lions having the 4-point favorite on the road, that would be a little bit odder to me. So Dameon Pierce, he's going to be out with a groin. I don't think this necessarily changes anything other than I don't think you have to be rostering the cuff right now when it comes to the Texans. I got to take off them. So he's going to be out. This would theoretically upgrade Dare into that desperation range when it comes to guessing on the running backs. Nico is questionable with a hamstring. He did get a limited in on Friday. That was the only practice that he was able to get in. Tank Dell, he did pop up on the injury report with a back. Limited on Friday when it comes to him. And then the main thing is you're still would be chasing Dalton Schultz as a dart throw because of the vacated opportunities. Not named Joe Mixon. No news on the Lions. I did want to look up this now that I think about it, that I got them pulled up. If we got news on what's going on with Jameson Williams. So no news on him right now about whether or not he will actually play. NFL roster exemption. Yeah, the exemption listed. So it does look like he's going to be playing on Sunday. And then finally, Finns and the Rams. You are going to be looking at 50 implied points in the game. So this is a lot of points. And this is not surprising for either one of these teams. And it's going to be the Rams by 1. None of that surprising. So I want to be rolling out as many pieces of this one as I can. And going back to the Bengals and the Ravens game, now we can start talking about running our wide receiver 3s in this game with a certain amount of confidence that at the very least we're going to get what's left over of a higher implied point total game. Now, when it comes down to this game, first and foremost, we could bring up the Dolphins. So Tyreek Hill, he's going to pop up, surprise pop up with a wrist, and he didn't practice today. So that you would be tracking to find out what goes on with him on Saturday's practice, because this is a Monday night game when it comes down to that. Now, generally speaking, the wide receiver 3 when it comes to the Dolphins is Devin Achane. So I don't know how much that really is going to change anything. You're going to be guessing between obviously the upgrade of Jalen Waddle if he does miss in this game, and then guessing that you're going to get Odell Beckham or Malik Washington rolling into that role. I probably would not be getting cute with them. This would upgrade like Jonnu Smith. If you do get Tyreek Hill out, this would probably be throwing him into that range of dart throw lands when it comes to him. Now, on the other news, when it comes to the Rams this week, right now, Demarcus Robinson, he gets upgraded to limited, as it says. This is an hour ago, so I already written my notes down if you're wondering about this. So, let's see. I have written down toe hip limited on Friday, so like that's how it goes with him. So I would be rolling him out there because of the higher implied point totals if he does go. If he doesn't go, now we can start talking about like maybe we could get a little bit spicy in your deeper leagues with like your Davis Allen up to 55% saps running as the number 3 in the offense. We could also be looking at Jordan Whittington stepping in and running the 3 role. I don't know necessarily if I would be trusting this offense if Demarcus Robinson is out to be rolling anybody. I don't know if you're going to get Tutu. I don't know if you're going to get Tyler Johnson. I don't know if you could necessarily say you're going to get Jordan Whittington. I don't know if you could guess who's going to be the guy that's going to step into that role. But if Demarcus Robinson does roll, he would be in that wide receiver 3 range pretty easily when it comes down to that. And that's about all I got for the Grift for week 10. And then hopefully I will be back on Sunday with the sausage.